you're lost, you can look and you will find me. Time after time. If you fall, I will catch you. I'll be waiting. Time after time.
And here we are, time and time again with your Path and Posture podcast. Tonight we're talking about time. Where does it go? And how do we create it? How do we manage it? How have we mismanaged it? Lots of things to talk about in regards to time. But the truth is, God is faithful and He will never allow our time to be wasted. Our purpose cannot be destroyed. That was impressive. You are just getting your voice back.
Yes,
it's not even back all the way.
No, I lost it last week.
That was fun. That was good. Nice little fun way to start this podcast. Good evening, everyone. I'm Miriah Turner, and this is my sister, Brittany Turner.
Hi.
And we are joining you tonight to talk about time in our Path and Posture podcast. And Brittany and I have been part of Harmony Roads, which is a family ministry. You can check out harmonyroads.com for a long time since we were in high school. And one of the newest things that we've done as a family is write a book. And it's more of what Brittany titles a creative catalog. And not only does it tell all of our stories collectively and independently in ministry and just as young women following Christ, growing up, what that looked like for us, but it also has fun recipes and music downloads that you can get if you're interested in some of the Harmony Roads original music written by my sister and my mom, and I help out here and there, all the sweet stuff that you like in every song that comes from me.
Right.
Yes. Well, I know it takes a lot of time to put all these things together, books, music, everything. So let's talk about time tonight and what that looks like in our lives, whatever path God might have you on, what posture you have as you're walking that path, and what are you doing with your time?
So one of the things that I wanted to address was when people feel like they've wasted their time, and I think we live in a time right now, at least, where we spend a lot of time on social media, and there comes a lot of guilt with that in trying to stay connected either through social media or try to get off it. I just feel like sometimes there's no balance because people are wanting to connect with you, but then you're nowhere.
But then you're in a room full of people not connecting with them,
right?
Because you're connecting with your
and
social world.
And the root of that is that we feel like we've wasted our time. I don't think we ever feel like we waste time when we're in the moment with somebody.
Maybe, I don't know. I have an angle with that so you took on a lot this fall with the Chronicles of Narnia musical that you did at RVR Music. And with that, you impacted a lot of kids and you had a great time and you were exercising your God-given talents for music and drama and everything. And C.S. Lewis, as you know, you love C.S. Lewis. So you were having a great time. And meanwhile, my time was spent here with my children and occasionally watching yours. And I'm present with all these kids, but I feel like, am I wasting my time?
Oh, that's a good point.
Because you're out pursuing your passion, pursuing your gifts and your dreams and having fun. And I'm like, but I'm here. And so at times I felt like, am I just wasting away? So even though you could be present with people, you could feel like you're in a situation where you're just wasting the things that you've been giving. You're wasting your time, your talents, and the things that you love, and you're not pursuing them. So that's one thing that I have had to wrestle with on occasion, just being home with my children. I stopped working full-time about, I guess it's going to be 4 years ago now, this spring. And I chose to stay home with my kids. And so what I've been kind of wrestling with God about is I have these desires to public speak, to work in media, to have that drive for television news and weather and to get back into that again. But then the minute I think about someone else doing my job here in my house, I'm like, claws come out. Absolutely not. This is my turf. No. And I would think about all the sweet things that I miss when my kids get up in the morning and their hair's all one side and they're, mommy, and I love it. So I think in those moments where you're in a spot and you just feel underappreciated, undervalued. You're not using your talents. You're just like, where am I?
And time is just going.
And time is
and
just passing, and you
Yeah.
see it passing. And the people on social media that you happen to check your phone, or and your sister who's just happened to let the cousins come over to play so she can go get something done. I think it's so important to think about how God didn't design us to live inwardly, but outwardly. And so even though I'm like present with these kids and I feel like, what am I doing? I'm just with these kids. Like this is our future. This is our legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important to keep that into perspective that God's not wasting a second that I'm having with these kids, whether it's correcting them, guiding them, breaking up a fight, or engaging with them and helping them color. Like they're going to remember all that.
Right.
And they're going to not remember necessarily what I did, but that I was there
Present. Yeah.
and that I was present.
And that has to do with, so that kind of goes with our main theme here. God gives us a path.
Mhm.
We're handed a deck of cards, or
Mhm.
a hand of cards, and you being here, that's your path.
Mhm.
And in that season, so what you're saying is you're watching your posture. You're
Mhm.
looking at your posture. How is my heart in this moment?
Mhm.
It's so easy to be tempted to feel like you are wasting away.
Mhm.
And I think that we're drawn, especially emotionally, when we're isolated with the 6 kids.
Yeah.
Um, to feel like you're going insane,
Mhm.
or that you've lost touch with what's relevant,
Mhm.
just in keeping up with Paw Patrol. And you're
Yes.
like,
The most recent cartoons.
yes, the most
Yes.
recent cartoons. Like we don't.
I can't tell you anything on the news, but I can tell you the hottest cartoons right now. That's pretty much my world. More importantly, I want to talk about tonight the 5 ways that you and I were talking about how we felt time could be wasted
The lie,
or
yeah.
felt like it was wasted, a lie that we would buy into. And we talked about it feeling like it's robbed or how it's mismanaged. You could give away your time freely, but not get it back. You can be demanded of your time without agreeing to it. And then your time could be abused, like in an unhealthy relationship or
Right.
something. And so when we're talking about time being robbed from us, more specifically, it's when a day just completely goes against routine. Your kid gets sick, you have to go pick them up from school. The whole report that you had to turn in at work is now 2 days behind because your house has been hit with the flu. And so you just feel like
It's like a chain reaction.
yeah. You can't even catch up with it. It's just disappearing before your eyes. You're just being robbed of it. And
Right.
so how does God meet you there and bring you the peace that you need is, I think, something that kind of needs to be addressed in the sense that you feel like you're being robbed. How do you go about dealing with it?
Well, we have at the preschool that I work at,
Mhm.
we have teachers out because their kids get sick or they get sick. I mean, this stuff, anything illness related, goes fast in the school.
Yes.
And so one thing I noticed with this season is that the teachers, how great their attitudes, and they come together. We had one teacher today that was just writing it solo. She did not have an aide, and she just had the best attitude regarding it. And I think that one of the things that can make up that feeling of robbed is that when you are back on track, how the community you've involved yourself receives you, where it's not like you were gone this whole time, but they say, welcome back.
Yeah.
And so surrounding yourself around people that are just grateful that you're there.
Yeah. And being one of those people yourself, when you have an employer, a friend or whatever, who's out of the mix and they come back and they've been battered and they've just been dealing with a lot, and just welcoming them with open arms and not being disgruntled that maybe you've had to pick up some extra slack or something to help them out. I think that's one way to display grace when someone's time is being taken from them and when they took some of yours because you were in that whole mix and you were experiencing it with them. That's a great example. When it's mismanaged, I mean, everybody can talk about mismanaging their time on social media. I probably spend way too much time on Facebook Marketplace. I think somewhere back in my mind, I'm like a DIY Joanna Gaines, gonna refix the world, everything. I see the dumpiest piece of furniture and I just want to pick it up and change it. And then when it comes to actually putting in the time to fix it, I'm like, this paint takes too long to dry. I'm just gonna put on the second coat. and then it
Right.
just gets so tacky. I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
You are not much better than when I
Yes.
purchased
So
you.
it's funny because I feel like I mismanage time buying things off Facebook Marketplace. And then when I go to redo them, it's like I mismanage my time with that too. But there have been some great projects and some great things that have happened because of Facebook. My mother-in-law, she'll tell you, she's been here at my house. She's like, I cannot believe the amount of things you found in this house off
Oh my
Facebook.
gosh. Tell the crib story.
Oh my goodness.
I love that crib story.
So no, this was when we were up in Minnesota.
This one is not. This was time was robbed
This was-
from her.
Yeah. So we were in Minnesota and we found out we were pregnant with Riley. And I'm like, I have one in a crib. This baby's coming 13 months later. I'm going to need another crib. And so I was looking on Facebook Marketplace. I found one and it looked nice. It was, a nice white backboard or whatever to it.
Mhm.
And so I said, Austin, go ahead and pick this up. It's down by your work. So he brought it home and I'm like, did you look at this before you put it in your car? He's like, what? I'm like, there's crayon all over this thing. This hardware doesn't even match anything. This isn't even going to go together. Like, you were totally gypped.
They were robbed of time and money.
We were robbed. And it's weird because when something happens like that on Facebook, you can totally message the person and be like, how dare you? But it's like, I'm not that confrontation type person. I'm just like, you are the one that's going to have to sleep at night knowing what you did. Like, that's your problem. That's between you and God. But I was just like, I cannot believe we fell for that. And so I'm like, you know what? No, I win. I win. I will not let her win. So I did not use it as a crib for Riley, but I painted the whole thing, found all new hardware, put it out on my back porch, and it became my cute little porch bench. And it had all these fluffy pillows on it. I had twinkle lights in my canopy, and it became my space. My little, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? My retreat.
Yes.
It was my retreat. And I sat in this crib and I was a winner. I felt like a winner and I came out on top. Goodness, I even took the front of that crib and I took the table saw to it and I created this whole footrest that we put in front of it on wheels. So that was a time where I probably spent a lot of time wasting my time on Facebook looking for this crib, finally found one. And then it turned into this woman wasting my time because I had to create this retreat just to stick it to her. But I discovered something in myself. God used that because now that was when I really started to be artsy and craftsy and stuff.
And cool tools.
I didn't realize I could be like
can handle
8 months
drill.
pregnant and using a table saw and, and a jigsaw and everything. And so
we were astonished back
You
here in
guys were-
Texas, by the way. We were in Texas watching all of this
you're like,
happen.
you need to
unfold.
stop. Please stop.
The baby is coming.
Oh my goodness. No, so it was I learned a lot about myself in that time. So I could say that woman even gave me a gift by making me spend time in the garage and in my studio painting
Well, that's-
because I didn't even know that about myself.
Well, Sierra had sent us a verse when we were going over
Mhm.
what we were going to talk about this week. And she said that she loved this verse from Joel 2:25.
Mhm.
I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten, the great locust and the young locust, the other locusts and the locust swarms, my great army that I sent among you.
That's a great verse.
And yeah, and it's like you think about your entire life, even I was talking to Austin today about 10 years. You look at your life, and there were so many choices made within even the last 10 years. What is God going to repay? Literally every single one. And I mean, He says He is.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about what you had said about giving our time freely without return. We do that with our kids, and then they grow up.
Yeah.
And then what happens then? We look at mom and dad. And there were plenty of times, I'm sure, that when we were being raised, they were like, what am I doing? Like kind of where we find ourselves now. And here we are down the street from them.
Yeah.
And they have, time with our kids. And
I think the best time spent, even though it feels like it's wasted because it's not being spent on you, is the time that's being spent serving others. You think about how hard it is to get up and to get out and to volunteer your time, to volunteer your efforts, and just to find a place to put those energies, and how unnatural it is for people to just go and volunteer. So many people are busy with their own families, they're busy working, but to specifically serve your community, those hurting, the widows and orphans. You think about how difficult it is to put yourself in that position, but that's the most worthwhile you can spend your time. It's just the most rewarding because you're literally pouring into the life of a stranger. You're meeting needs where they need to be met. You're closing the gap, and you're being Jesus to these people. So I kind of thought about that too, giving freely without return. Yes, of course, mommies, we see you. With children, that's absolutely what they're asking of you. You give your time freely without return. But then I also think about, how God calls us to think about the widows and the orphans, and just volunteering our time, being good Christian men and women, and what that looks like, and how unnatural it feels to do that, to make time to volunteer as a small group or to volunteer as a family on a Saturday and go pack lunches for homeless downtown or something.
Oh, those really, like when I did the Houston Pregnancy Help Center, there were a lot of times where I would leave on those Mondays and I'd be like, there was no return.
No.
I mean, obviously with the women that I served with, they were always there, but we all left feeling defeated sometimes.
But I think it's also good to note that most times when you go into a volunteer situation or a situation where you're not getting anything out of it, like you're there to help someone else, how sometimes it's just pulling teeth. You just have to get up and you're like, I don't want to go. But the minute you get there and you see the energy, you see some smiles, you're like, okay, we're doing this together.
Right.
And then when you leave, you're like, oh, when are we doing this again? This is great.
I know. And I think that's just a gift from God where he knits these people from different backgrounds and different cultures together to come for that purpose of it's just one of those immediately reaping benefits of life, giving life.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
And so then the other thing to talk about is when your time is also demanded without agreement. So we kind of thought here about jobs and overtime, because of course there's an agreement with a job. You have agreed to give someone your time and you're working for them. But when there's that overtime, and that's something that wasn't agreed on, but things need to get done because whatever needs to be met.
Or, Brendan, my husband, he's had to put a couple more trips in, to just make sure things get done.
One thing that I always would like to think about when it came to work, and if work starts to take away from family or faith, whether it's your time at church on Sunday, you can't go because you were up late on Saturday putting a report together or something, is that when it comes to working, even though you have a boss and you may have a higher up that you report to, Dad always kind of talked about how we should always work unto the Lord. And I think that really helped me to battle the disgruntled feelings that you may get from giving time that you didn't necessarily agree to. And no matter what you're doing at home, cleaning toilets, or at work, putting reports together or putting a story together, whatever it is, like for me with television news, you do it unto the Lord. You do it with joy. And so that touches back to the path and posture that we're here to talk about.
You just reminded me of a really life-changing story that Daddy gave me when I was in high school. I had lunch in the cafeteria, and I was watching the janitor just clean up the scraps that some kids would just leave. They wouldn't be responsible, and so she would pick up their plates, and then she would just be pushing her trash can around and just picking up. And I went to Daddy and I said, Daddy, what's the difference between the janitor and Billy Graham, who stands in front of thousands of people and they're all getting saved? And what's the difference between them? And Dad said, if they are serving unto the Lord and doing what God's called them to do, there is no difference.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's really hard to feel like if you are in a janitorial position, it might, what's the benefits of this? First of all, I've never seen an unhappy janitor. These people are some special people. But, it is, you look at that, if that could be your life, or if that is your life, how are you happy? And Dad, used that opportunity to tell me that when your heart isn't walking in obedience to God's will in your life, there is no difference.
Yeah, absolutely. The janitor or Billy Graham, not wasting any time.
No.
If you're being obedient to God's calling on your life, and he's got a purpose and a plan for whatever season you're in. And going into this next one, I always, throughout everything that I went through in my younger years and my high school, college years, I feel like I always touch back to God will never waste your tears. He will never waste your pain. And that I think also ties into he will never waste your time when we're talking about time being abused with specifically unhealthy relationships is what we both kind of thought of. And, you and I were in different relationships before we found our husbands. And I can honestly say I'm thankful for those relationships because it spared me putting Austin through so much grief because I learned and I changed a ton. God blessed me through those heartaches by teaching me so much about myself that I had to change to make life with another human being work.
Right.
So, you think, oh, I spent years with this person thinking this was it. And even though God says, it's not, but you are also not it right now. So I'm going to take this that you've chosen to start. You've chosen this relationship. I'm going to take this and I'm going to mold you. And you're going to be all the better because of these lessons that you're going to go through with this person. So I don't think it's pointless at all.
Right.
I think, Austin would probably be very grateful if he knew the person I was in high school. He'd be like, "That's no way,
come on,
no way is that my wife."
Don't be so hard on yourself.
No,
I love you.
No, thank you. No, I just think, and it's probably just some childish ignorance too. Because gosh, who are you when you're 18?
I know we got married,
but from
young.
18 to 21,
you got 21 and I was 22.
Yeah, we had some pretty educational years, I would say.
Yes, we did.
So
we advocate. I mean, I advocate.
And
for
here we
young
were
marriage,
thinking,
too.
oh, we're wasting our time with the wrong people. Absolutely not. God was totally just sculpting us and just cutting off all the stuff that wasn't supposed to be there,
or
and teaching us,
or showing you, like, with one of my past relationships, I still am very close to their family, and so it's just showing that not just that he's sculpting you, but he's sculpting a world where God lives abundantly and fruitfully, and and so, like, just being able to, people are always like, what, you're still talking to the family? And I'm like, that's just God. That's just God's grace. Especially when you just walk in obedience to what he wants.
Yeah.
And he wants people in community. He wants your love, and he wants, above everything else, for his love to be proclaimed and his glory and his name. And so you do that with anyone, not just the people that you choose to have in your life. Sometimes God just keeps the people that were in your life.
Yeah. And I think you make a great point in terms of time and people. I think we are so narrow-minded and we tend to put God in such a small box, in the box of time, when you realize time is irrelevant to him.
Yes, I think we look at our lives as, I was 0 years old and I will be 100 years old.
Yes.
And what am I doing there?
And he's eternal. He's infinite.
He's very circular.
Yeah.
And, like, that's what, when we were talking, I love when that winter's coming back, or that spring is coming back. These are very cyclic things that are in our lives, and we're different every time they come back. And so God is the same forever and always, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But I love that even with the seasons, and Echo, we actually divide the book into the seasons, but it's just such a good, comforting notion that it comes back. God comes back. God's always here, but, like, the feelings of being purposed, and this wave roller coaster that we're always on, it's for a purpose. Where we come back better. We're and we're always growing. Yes. And there's a purpose for that.
Yeah. And so going back to time and people, there you are getting over your cough and your scratchy voice. No, you're fine. So the fact that your time with that gentleman ended, that relationship before Brendan, but you kept his family because God had an all different purpose for you and that family. It's not about the time that you spent, it's the people, And so I feel like as long as we orient our hearts around serving people, serving others, and having this Christ-like mindset of just being outward focused. One thing that it reminds me of is, so Matt Burns was in our band way back.
And he helped start it.
And whenever we had band practices and they were at a certain time, He'd probably be there like an hour
He was
later
an hour late
because
every single
he
time.
was people focused, and he would be talking to people at church or talking to people wherever he
And
was
he'd
at the
lose
store,
time. Yeah.
and he'd lose track of time. But you know what? That is such a God-given gift to be able to operate like that. At the same time, it could be frustrating with the people around you.
type A people. Yeah.
For type A people. But you invest in what's most important. And I think that's one of the lasting impressions that he made on you and I too. It's just that he made an investment of time in our family and in us
Mhm.
and in the ministry. And it
helped shape the
it shaped
ministry.
it, and it was amazing. And it was just such a great example. I always remembered that about him. Just he was usually late because he was talking
was
and
always
being personal and real with someone.
Yeah.
That was nice.
And so like we talk about robbed time, mismanaged time, given freely without return time, demanded with not agreement on our end,
Mhm.
and then abused. And so like we've addressed that, but now with our habits and our dreams, our routines, those accidents or even those mistakes, I think one of the things that we can kind of drive, you're saying my time's not wasted. How do I feel that way? How do I feel that truth? How do we feel that God is going to restore with the locust of Eden?
Yeah. I think it's just taking time to know him and to trust him and to know that your story is not your own. Like you may think that it's your own, but there's someone who knows you deeper and better than you even know yourself.
And beginning to know that is taking those first steps in obedience.
Obedience, yep. And just engaging in time with him and talking with him. Goodness, when I get up with the girls in the morning, we go to school, we hop in the car and I say, okay, who's going to talk to God? And, and they usually say, you. And so I'll talk to God first. And, we just thank him for the breath in our lungs, the sight in our eyes, and there are teachers that are going to teach us. And then the girls want to take their turn because I feel like they have a little bit of a confidence booster
Right.
seeing mommy do it. And then they'll just thank God for the smallest little things. And it's just precious. Yeah. And again, going back to time, that's time with my kids that I feel like it's not wasted. It's a drive to school. It's 10 minutes. I'm not going to waste this time in the car. We're going to pray and we're just going to learn how to talk to God together and learn how to trust him with our lives because they're not our own. They were given to us, and those 3 little lives were given to me. And I feel like I've been trusted with a huge gift.
So let's go back through the our lists here and let's talk about what are our steps or what does it look like when we apply obedience to God and give him our time. So time, let's say, is robbed. When the day goes against our routine, what do we do?
I think that's when you need to be not the type A. Like I tend to get very upset when things get derailed. In order to trust God and to see that your time is not being wasted, you need to open your eyes, broaden your horizon, see that there's a bigger picture beyond the way that you saw the day going, the way that you saw your day steering about and the routine. And just know that even if it's blown out of the routine, it's for a reason. And God's gifting you the grace and the faith and the courage to step into the mess and conquer it.
Mm.
So I think that's how we see our time's not being wasted on a derailed day, a mismanaged social media. I honestly think that that's something that we all need to approach with discretion in the sense that what you should be doing as opposed to being on your phone. Everyone, I feel like, mismanages time with social media because they're trying to escape something. I might be trying to hop on my social media because I'm trying to escape the chaos of my children instead of engaging in it and just controlling it. It's easier to just escape.
Right.
And so
or compare. That's something I have an issue with. I have an issue with people jumping on social media from their escape, and then all of a sudden now they're faced with a comparison, and then they turn back to their life, and then it just is this constant back and forth. I have a real big problem with algorithms adjusting to the things that we're searching for and only filling our lives with the things that we want or think we want. And so we're no longer challenged to face things that are uncomfortable, like our lives.
Yes.
So we use that escape because the algorithms have adjusted to what our minds, what we think we want. And so it's incredibly frustrating for me seeing like my people, struggling with that.
Yeah.
Or myself struggling with that. I'm like, get away.
No, I know exactly. But trusting God and believing that we have not wasted our time on social media and let it go by spending too much time on it, I think is just knowing that you were not created to be on your phone and just allowing the Holy Spirit to put that check in your heart.
And to follow that conviction.
Yes. So we talk about obedience. Conviction's also something that we need to be okay with.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good, but when you have a little check in your mind, your heart, I really should just go be a good wife and get those dishes done and not sit on my phone, or I really should just go read a book and not just turn on a TV show for the kids and get my 20 minutes of Facebook time or something, read a book with the kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the way that we don't buy the lie of, oh, you've wasted your time on social media is just by allowing the Holy Spirit to say, hey, it's time to get off, and listening. So it's just that correction and that obedience to listen to that.
And as far as time given freely without return, what that looks like when God is turning it back to us and restoring it, I think a good step in obedience is to have a play date or to volunteer or to make those steps where you're not alone. I think isolation is probably the worst thing you can do.
I think that's when the lie comes into place,
Right.
is that when you freely give your time to your children or to other people, if you're isolated in that action of giving, you think, what is going on? This is so pointless.
Right.
And that's where the lie comes in. When in actuality, if it's your children, that's your legacy. That's the future. That's the kingdom come. That's our next generation of warriors for Christ. How could you go wrong with spending time with them and teaching them and loving on them? That's the best place you could be. So of course the lie tries to come in and say, this is pointless.
Right.
And when it comes to other people, like volunteering your time, like we talked about outside the home, that's being the hands and feet of Jesus. How could that is exactly what you're called to do.
And when I would spend time with the Houston Pregnancy Help Center, they would have a lunch. They would make us lunch, all the volunteers, every single day.
That's
And
nice.
so they would create an area where we would come and communicate and come in community and just bear one another's burdens.
That's great.
And so if you are in a volunteering position or if you are a leader of one, consider doing that. Consider giving back their time by giving them time, and filling their stomachs. Because I can't tell you, I mean, these women, they could cook.
That's wonderful.
I love.
What a blessing.
I know. I miss their cooking. There was a kitchen. They would. We would
go
just
to town.
Yes, and it was so beautiful. I had no problem eating and going back to another client.
That's wonderful. And then the next lie of wasted time that we think about is demanded without agreement, overtime at jobs. So to combat that lie that you've wasted your time at your job because they've made you work too much. Again, I just go back to, as long as you're in that right mindset of working and serving the Lord and you're doing it with a joyful heart, I don't think you're wasting any time. If anything, I remember going into work on days that I was supposed to have off. It's one thing to go in there disgruntled and angry and feeling, I don't want to be here and this is wasting my time, or walking in with that joyful heart and a smile and maybe a cup of coffee for the friend that you knew also got called in.
Right.
And just being that positive light. Goodness. And if you watch the news, it's one thing to see how negative it is. It's also very negative behind the scenes because everyone is saturated in that environment, and then the stories that we're covering of who died and what fire and what politics. And so it's very easy to get jaded or disgruntled. I knew a lot of very positive people though, so I feel very blessed in that category. But I also knew of some negative people, and I knew in my own heart how easy it was to go into work feeling like I don't want to talk to anybody. But it's when you do talk to someone, it makes a world's difference. You walk in, you say, good morning, how was your weekend? Or anything. Just ask about someone else. Yes.
Posture your heart.
You're totally posturing your heart. You can walk in angry or you can walk in joyful that you're there and that you have that job. Even though you're not supposed to be there on that day, you got called in, you have a job. And there are so many people that would love that position, but you've been blessed with it. That's one thing I would tell myself back in the day on those mornings where I was like, I don't want to get out of bed at 2 a.m. You know how many people would love to get out of bed at 2 a.m. for that
Mhm.
position? And ultimately, like, I think that's probably one of the things that helped me 4 years ago this spring give it up, was that my heart was more so, I really want to serve my family more than I want to get up at 2 in the morning. I'd rather get up at 2 in the morning and give this baby a bottle
Yeah.
than head into work.
Right.
And I think that's what helped me make the call when Austin ended up getting a job transfer and I had an opportunity to work in Minnesota. I'm like, no, I really shouldn't. I need to be here. So time isn't wasted at work when you've been overworked. If you're working unto the Lord and you go in with a joyful heart and be that light to other people.
And I've been giving Cora, my eldest, jobs to
Mhm.
do. And so one time I gave her, like, her chore was to do socks.
Mm.
And she sat on that bed and she did not like, she thought
You
I
would
was,
give her
I
the
was,
socks.
I know.
That's what you don't like.
Yeah, I don't like it. So I gave her socks and she was just complaining. And so I literally took my Mac and I looked up like a third world country and I was like, honey, you have socks to fold. These people don't even have socks. And
Mhm.
so giving her that perspective, even at the age she was,
Mhm.
it was like, whoa,
Mhm.
like that exists.
Mhm.
And so giving yourself perspective. I mean, and we have on our smartphones the ability to get perspective in
Yes.
any type of situation.
Mhm.
Just look at WebMD.
Yes, seriously.
And so yeah, so that, those are some things. Gain perspective.
Mhm.
If you are feeling like your time is being demanded,
Mhm.
gain perspective,
Mhm.
because the time that you're giving is sometimes time that somebody else does not have.
Mhm. And then the last one is the lie that you've wasted your time because you've abused your time, specifically, possibly in an unhealthy relationship, or an unhealthy friendship, you know.
I think the first step is to pray,
Mhm.
because you have to pray
You need clarity
clarity.
because people say love is blind. And honestly, yeah, sure. I agree.
Friendships.
Friendships are blind. Wherever you just don't see things going beyond it and everything's just rose colored glasses because that's the only way you could ever picture it
Mhm.
with friendships or relationships. So, yeah, you pray for that clarity because that's the only thing that's going to help you to get some perspective to move on from that situation.
You've got to posture your heart into giving your time to this person that's abusing you and loving God completely so that you can love yourself correctly and
Mhm.
see what that looks like.
Mhm.
Because if you're loving yourself correctly, then you would not allow your time to be abused.
Mm-hmm. Yep. With someone who's just not compatible with you, or someone who doesn't love and support your dreams, or, it's those kinds of relationships.
And yes, God is meeting us all where we are supposed to be, and He'll meet us at wherever we are.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of like what our church says: it's okay to not be okay, but it is not okay to stay that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, if you find that your time is being abused in an unhealthy relationship of any sort, I would begin in prayer
Mm-hmm. That's great.
and reaching out to the people that you trust.
Mm-hmm. As hard as that may be, because you tend to almost cut off those people when you really want to continue on something that you are passionate about, but they've kind of given you some red flags. You're like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. So I think it takes a little bit of humble pie too.
Yeah.
And reaching out to those people and be like, you know what, I need to talk about something. And honestly, if they were kind of giving you red flags at the beginning, they genuinely care about you. I think they'd be more than happy to have a talk with you and not give you an I told you so if they're really the loving people that they claim to be, in the sense that they were truly concerned about your well-being in that friendship or that relationship. Then they would truly address you with grace and not I told you so's. So
And so in all of this, and the lie that time is wasted, and the truth that God restores, He also makes it beautiful. We may not see that on this side of heaven, but we will see it in eternity. And we will have that full perspective and that full nature and purpose of what God was doing.
yeah, back
and
to how
plans.
he's not in a box. He's eternal. He's everlasting. And we see time from A to B down here, and he sees it A to Z up there. So
Yeah.
we see a very small bit of the spectrum. And so how could we think that it's wasted when he holds it all?
I know.
You know, it's amazing. But he's so good that he gives us renewed strength every morning, fresh days, fresh seasons, just to feel energized and to start again. And ultimately, he gives us a never-ending gift of life with him so that there's no time ever wasted.
There was a quote that I read recently by Harper Lee. She said, "Until I feared I'd lose it, I never loved to read. One doesn't love breathing."
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
so,
good.
yeah. And so I think that when you wake up in the morning and you realize that you're breathing,
Mhm.
I think one of the things that's really kind of when you're in that mindset of gratitude
And thankfulness.
and thankfulness and grace. And so I honestly think Harper Lee was onto something. You have to get up and you have to spend time with God in his word.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's given us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's easy to just, like I said, pray on the way to school or listen to some worship in the car. But it's important to open the book. He wrote it for a reason. It's not just there in the background. It's instructions, it's stories, it's parables, it's prayers, promises that were given to us so that we would know him. And the only way to know him is to open it. And isn't it amazing how hard that is?
I wanted to encourage, if you're here and you're listening and you're like, I don't even know where to start. We were always told growing up that there are 30 to 31 days in the month and there are 31 chapters in Proverbs. Start on a proverb a day.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way.
It's a good just beginning.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got it at any point of your day, just flip open your phone, flip open the Bible, and just read that day's proverb.
Does anybody have any flip phones anymore?
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for. Yeah. Okay.
Flip open your phone. Call ATT. Collect.
But yeah, start there.
Yeah, it's a good way to start.
I loved what we did last week where we prayed.
Yeah, let's pray and just close it out. And I think
that he does make everything beautiful.
He does, and he holds all of time, and so we don't have to ever worry about losing it because he created it in the first place. And as long as we trust him with our lives, he's going to order it rightly. So, all right, Father God, we thank you for Path and Posture. We thank you that we had this time together tonight just to talk and to talk real, to talk life, to talk about the good, the bad, and everything in between. And Lord, we thank you that you created time and you were there before time and you've ordered everything, God. And if we would just trust you with our time, you would place us where we need to be, to learn the lessons we need to learn, to impact the people we need to impact, to grow and serve you, and grow in your kingdom, and help others to learn more about you as well. And Father, we thank you that you promise us that you would restore to us what the locusts have eaten, God, that nothing is wasted, nothing is taken, Father, as long as we learn to serve you in obedience, to trust you with our hearts and our minds and our soul and our strength, and just follow you. And we pray, Lord, that the words spoken tonight, the conversation that we've had, is just going forth for your kingdom, for your glory, and touching the lives of those listeners that have tuned in. And we just praise you, Father, for this amazing way to connect with people, for two busy moms that are together on a quiet night, just having a conversation. And we just want to connect with our community and people in the world that just want to talk about the things that we're talking about. Time. What does that look like with you? And how have you promised that to us? And Father, we just thank you for your goodness, your grace, your mercy, your forgiveness, and that we are met with all of that fresh every day. And so we lift up the name of Jesus tonight, and we pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you taking time to listen and to learn with us, to grow with us. Again, if you want to learn more about Harmony Roads, you can visit harmonyroads.com. You can find out more about our creative catalog, Echo, Reaching for Authenticity, more of our stories and our music. And also, we do have a little bit of music at the end of this podcast. If you can call it that, it's more so kind of the bloopers. Struggling. Us trying to sing Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time. And yeah, enjoy.
The second hand unwind. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me. Time after time. If you fall, I will catch you. I'll be waiting. Time after time. If you're lost, you can look and
Where'd you go?
then you say, go slow. I fall behind. The second hand unwinds. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me.
So bad.
Time after time. If you fall, I will catch you.
You're bad at the harmony. You're bad at the harmony.
Isn't that the boys?
No, you're bad at it.
If you fall, I will catch you. I will be waiting. Time after time. Time after time.